And who is this? The voice, slick with self-satisfaction and bourbon from the preceding luncheon, cut through the low murmur of the strategy briefing. Marine General Alistair Finch, a man whose uniform seemed starched with arrogance, gestured with a dismissive flick of his wrist. His target was a man sitting alone in the back row, a ghost in a room of polished brass and ambition. Did the catering staff send a representative? Or perhaps you're from IT, here to fix the projector. A ripple of sycophantic laughter followed. The man in question, Thomas Corbin, didn't react. He looked profoundly out of place, a worn stone in a jewelry box. His jacket was a faded canvas affair, the kind you buy at a surplus store and keep for a decade too long. His hair was nondescript, his face etched with a quiet exhaustion that seemed to have settled deep into his bones. He looked like a man who had spent too many nights waiting for a call that either came or didn't, and found little relief in either outcome. He simply sat there, his hands resting loosely in his lap, his gaze fixed on the presentation screen, though it was currently blank. He seemed to possess a stillness that was almost unnerving, a complete lack of fidgeting or discomfort that was more alien in this room than his civilian clothes. General Finch, enjoying his audience, took a step closer, his own chest puffed out like a pouter pigeon. He was a man from an older school of war, one of barrels and tonnage of shock and awe that you could see and feel. The new battlefields of signals, code, and unmanned shadows were, to him, a lesser, almost cowardly form of conflict. "I'm serious," Finch boomed, a smirk playing on his lips. "We're discussing the future of asymmetric warfare, and we have this." He gestured again at Corbin. "I hear you're some kind of drone specialist, a consultant." He practically spat the word. "Tell me, son, what's your high score? Did you get the little achievement badge on your video game for taking out the most enemy quadcopters?" The laughter was louder this time, more confident. The junior officers, eager to curry favor, joined in. Thomas Corbin's expression didn't change. He just blinked, a slow, deliberate motion as if conserving energy. His silence seemed to infuriate Finch, who saw it not as dignity, but as weakness or insolence. He thrived on reaction, on the fluster and fear he could instill. This man offered him nothing, a blank wall against which his ego could only bruise itself. Across the room, Marine Captain Evans watched, a knot tightening in his gut. He was younger than most of the colonels and generals, but he'd spent 36 months spread over 3 tours in places where the enemy wasn't a uniformed soldier, but a 10-pound drone with a grenade strapped to it. He knew the high-pitched whine that preceded death from above, and he knew men like Corbin. Or rather, he knew the type. He saw what Finch, in his parade ground pomposity, could not. He saw the way Corbin sat, not slouched, but settled, his center of gravity perfectly balanced, a posture of immense physical control that took years of brutal training to make look so relaxed. He saw the man's eyes, which weren't blank at all. They were constantly, almost imperceptibly scanning, not just the room, but the people in it. Assessing exits, watching hands, noting who was too loud, who was too quiet. It was the subtle, ceaseless threat assessment of a man for whom an open room was just a different kind of kill box. Finch saw a schlubby civilian. Evans saw a predator trying very, very hard to look like prey. Evans's eyes drifted to Corbin's wrist, where a sliver of dark ink peeked out from under the cuff of his worn shirt. It wasn't a flashy tattoo, just a simple, stark trident. Small, easily missed, but to those who knew, it was a symbol more potent than any general's star. It was the mark of a Navy SEAL. Evans felt a cold dread mix with a rising, furious anger. This wasn't just disrespect, it was sacrilege. Finch was mocking a man who had likely walked through fires the general only read about in sanitized after-action reports. Evans knew he should stay quiet, that a captain did not correct a general, but the injustice of it was a physical weight. He saw Finch lean in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial, mocking whisper that was still loud enough for the first few rows to hear. "I also heard you had to bring your kid with you today. Childcare issues?" He chuckled. "Can't very well win the war on terror if we have to stop for juice boxes and nap time, can we?" The general was enjoying this, preening for his subordinates, using this quiet man as a whetstone to sharpen his own authority. He was completely, blissfully unaware that he was dancing on a landmine. The general, now feeling the full force of his own perceived wit, straightened up and addressed the room again, his voice ringing with theatrical command. No, let's have it. This is a learning environment. We're talking about drone elimination. This man is supposedly an expert. So let's have the number." He locked his eyes on Corbin, a predator moving in for the kill. "Come on, son, don't be shy. We're all brothers in arms here, even our civilian contractors." The condescension was thick enough to choke on. "Give us the number. How many enemy drones have you personally been credited with eliminating? 10? 20? 100? Give us something to be impressed by." The room fell silent. The forced laughter died in the throats of the junior officers. The moment had shifted from casual mockery to a direct, public challenge. It was uncomfortable. It was cruel. All eyes were on Thomas Corbin, who still hadn't moved a muscle. He just sat there, absorbing the hostility, his patience a tangible force in the room. He seemed to be counting something in his head, but it wasn't drones. It was something else entirely. Perhaps the seconds, perhaps the heartbeats, perhaps the number of reasons he shouldn't do what he was about to do. Captain Evans felt his own heart pounding. He could see the slight shift in Corbin's shoulders, the almost imperceptible tightening of the muscles in his jaw. This was the moment. The breaking point. Or was it? The man's control was absolute. Evans had seen men break under far less pressure, but Corbin seemed to be made of something else, something forged at temperatures Finch couldn't even imagine. The silence stretched, becoming a weapon in itself. It was Corbin's silence now, not Finch's. He owned it. He was using it to make the general's loud, boorish words hang in the air, echoing in their own absurdity. Finally, after a pause that felt like an eternity, Thomas Corbin lifted his head. His eyes, clear and steady, met the general's. There was no anger in them, no fear. There was something far more terrifying, a profound and unshakable certainty. When he spoke, his voice wasn't loud, but it filled the cavernous briefing room, each word perfectly enunciated, carrying the weight of a truth the men in that room were not prepared for. "General," he began, his tone calm and measured, "you're asking the wrong question." A confused murmur rippled through the audience. General Finch's smug expression faltered, replaced by a flash of irritation. "The wrong question? Son, it's a simple number. It's not calculus." Corbin gave a slight, almost imperceptible shake of his head. "It's not about how many drones you eliminate," he continued, his voice never rising yet commanding absolute attention. "That's just scorekeeping. That's the video game you were talking about. The real question, the only question that matters, is how many of our own you get to bring home." The words landed with the force of a physical blow. The entire moral calculus of the room shifted. The swaggering talk of kill counts and high scores suddenly felt childish, obscene. "It's about the platoon that doesn't get ambushed because you neutralize the Overwatch drone they never saw. It's about the forward operating base that doesn't get hit with a mortar barrage because you jammed the spotter drone a kilometer away. It's about the medic who doesn't have to run into enemy fire because the IED wasn't triggered by a remote signal." He paused, letting the images sink in. "You don't get a medal for the firefight that never happened. You don't get a citation for the names that don't end up on a memorial wall. So, no, General, I can't give you a number for my drone elimination count." Just as Finch, his face now a mask of thunderous rage and confusion, opened his mouth to retort, The grand double doors at the back of the auditorium swung open with a decisive thud. Every head turned. Standing in the doorway, flanked by two aides, was a man whose presence immediately sucked the air out of the room. 4 stars glittered on his collar. It was Admiral John Hayes, the commander of Naval Special Warfare Command. He was a living legend, a man who had commanded SEALs at every level. The room scrambled to its feet, a clatter of chairs and a chorus of "Attention on deck!" Admiral Hayes silenced them with a single, sharp gesture. He didn't acknowledge General Finch. He didn't even seem to see him. His eyes scanned the room for a moment before locking on to the quiet man in the back row. A look of immense respect, almost reverence, softened the Admiral's famously stern features. He strode down the aisle, his footsteps echoing in the stunned silence, stopping directly in front of Thomas Corbin, who had remained seated. "Tom," the Admiral said, his voice quiet but resonant. "Sorry I'm late. I heard you were giving a briefing." He then turned to face the assembled officers, his gaze sweeping over them like a fire control radar before finally settling on the pale, frozen face of General Finch. "General," Hayes said, his voice now laced with ice, "allow me to make a formal introduction. This is Master Chief Petty Officer Thomas Corbin, retired." A collective gasp went through the room. A Master Chief, the highest enlisted rank, the backbone of the Navy, and in the SEAL teams, a figure of mythic status. "Master Chief Corbin," the Admiral continued, his voice rising in volume, "is the architect and lead operator for a program you are not cleared to know the name of. We call it Guardian Angel. It is the most effective counter-UAS system ever deployed by any military on Earth." He let that sink in. "General Finch, you asked for a number. You want a score. Let me give you one." The Admiral's eyes were flinty. 2 years ago, a swarm of 32 explosive-laden drones was launched at Combat Outpost Ramrod in Helmand Province. Our phalanx guns took out 7. Our electronic warfare assets jammed another 4. The remaining 21 were on a direct terminal path to the ammo depot and the field hospital. The room was utterly still. Every person there could picture the carnage. "The attack lasted 94 seconds, Admiral Hayes stated, his voice cold and precise. In that time, Master Chief Corbin, operating the Guardian Angel system from a shipping container 7,000 miles away in Virginia, manually identified, tracked, and neutralized every single one of the remaining 21 drones. Not one impacted the outpost. The official casualty count for that attack was 0. The projected casualty count, had his system failed, was over 200, including the entire surgical staff. He paused, his gaze boring into Finch. "Does that number impress you, General?" Finch looked like he had been punched in the stomach. He was white as a sheet, his mouth opening and closing with no sound coming out. The Admiral wasn't finished. "Master Chief Corbin holds the Navy Cross, 3 silver stars, and 5 bronze stars with Valor. Most of the citations for those medals are completely redacted, because the operations he conducted are so sensitive they will likely never be declassified. He has spent more time behind enemy lines than anyone in this room has spent in a combat zone." Then Admiral Hayes did something that sent a shockwave through the room. He turned to face Corbin, who had now slowly risen to his feet. The 4-star Admiral, the commander of the most elite fighting force in the world, squared his shoulders, brought his hand to his brow in a salute so sharp it could have cut glass, and held it. "Master Chief," Hayes said, his voice thick with an emotion that no one in that room had ever heard from him before, "on behalf of the United States Navy and a grateful nation, thank you for your service." For a moment, there was only the sight of the Admiral saluting the quiet man in the worn jacket. Then, Captain Evans, his eyes burning with tears of vindication, snapped his own hand up in a salute. A heartbeat later, the officer next to him followed suit. And then the next, and the next, until every single person in the room, colonels, commanders, captains, and a single, utterly broken Marine general was standing at attention, saluting the humble man in the back row. The only sound was the rustle of 200 uniformed sleeves and the silent, profound respect that finally, overwhelmingly, filled the room. Corbin, his face a mask of quiet dignity, returned the Admiral's salute with a nod, a gesture of acknowledgement from one warrior to another. The formal part of the briefing was, for all intents and purposes, over. The room broke apart in a daze, officers speaking in hushed, awestruck tones. General Finch seemed to shrink into his uniform, avoiding all eye contact as he made a hasty, silent exit. He had built his career on a foundation of loud confidence, and in the space of 5 minutes, a quiet man had demolished it with the simple, devastating power of the truth. Admiral Hayes placed a hand on Corbin's shoulder. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that, Tom. Some people still think the loudest voice in the room is the strongest." Corbin just shook his head slightly. "He didn't know, Admiral. Well, that's all." The grace in his response was more damning than any insult could have been. The Admiral's expression softened. "How's your daughter, Sarah, right?" For the first time, a genuine warmth spread across Corbin's face, chasing away the shadows of exhaustion. "She's great, smart as a whip. Waiting for me in the lobby. I told her I'd only be an hour." This was the reason he had retired. After his wife had passed from a sudden illness, he had faced a choice: continue the silent, secret war, or raise the little girl who was his only anchor to the world. He chose her. He chose juice boxes and bedtime stories over kill zones and classified briefings. As the Admiral and Corbin spoke quietly, Captain Evans approached them, his heart still hammering in his chest. He felt an overwhelming need to say something, to bridge the gap between his own conventional service and this man's quiet heroism. He waited for a pause in their conversation, then cleared his throat. "Master Chief Corbin?" Corbin and the Admiral both turned to him. Evans felt his mouth go dry, but he forced the words out. "Sir, I just wanted to thank you." Corbin's gaze was patient, waiting. "My younger brother," Evans said, his voice cracking slightly. "He's an Army medic. He was stationed at Combat Ramrod 2 years ago." Understanding dawned in Corbin's eyes. He didn't offer platitudes or false modesty. He just looked at the young Marine captain and saw the profound relief and gratitude warring with the memory of a fear he could only imagine. Corbin simply reached out and clasped Evans's shoulder firmly. "I'm glad he's okay, Captain," he said. It was all that needed to be said. The connection was made, a bond forged in a moment of violence that one man had prevented and the other's family had survived. Later, as Thomas Corbin walked through the polished marble lobby of the Pentagon, the weight of the generals and the admirals seemed to fall away. He saw a small girl with his late wife's eyes, sitting patiently on a bench, swinging her legs and drawing in a coloring book. She looked up, and her face broke into a brilliant smile. "Daddy!" she cried, running into his arms. He lifted her effortlessly, holding her close, burying his face in her hair. She smelled of crayons and bubble gum. She was real. She was the reason. As he held her, he felt the last of the tension from the briefing room drain away. He was no longer Master Chief Corbin, the guardian angel, the silent warrior. He was just Dad. And in the quiet dignity of that simple, profound role, he had found a peace that no medal or accolade could ever provide. He had saved thousands of lives in the shadows, but the one he held in his arms now was the one that had, in turn, saved him. He walked out of the building, leaving the world of war and whispers behind. A hero hiding in plain sight, his greatest mission just beginning.